What I'm about to share with you in this video has completely changed my life. This took me from a broke, stuck, frustrated, miserable, resentful person with no idea what I wanted to do with my life to somebody who was able to buy my dream condo with an incredible view, a murdered out matte black Lamborghini, help hundreds of coaches sell tens of millions of dollars online and completely change their lives, and actually become somebody that I'm proud to be. It wasn't always like this. Like I said, I used to be very resentful. I used to be very miserable. I used to not have a very positive attitude because I was just so stuck and I was getting in my own way and I was failing all of the tests that were thrown at me. But on the path towards greatness, you're going to be thrown a series of tests. But here's the kicker. On the other side of each test is everything that you want. And the higher you climb on the path to success, the more powerful and tougher these tests are going to be. But God saves his toughest battles for his strongest warriors. So as you grow, you also get stronger. The battles become tougher, but you become more capable. And so what I'm going to share with you in this video is a very bulletproof, battle-hardened framework to get anything that you want out of life. This is the secret to leveling up your standards, to leveling up your environment, leveling up your bank account, your income, your happiness, your fulfillment, your impact in the world, everything. And so at the end of the day, really what it comes down to is all spiritual warfare stems from an internal battle between purity versus temptation. Purity versus temptation. That's really what it comes down to. And if you think about it on a very simplified level, we have the choice every single day to choose between things that aren't very good and very fun right now, but it's going to lead to a life of happiness and heaven on earth. Or we can choose temptation, which feels amazing right now, but leads to a life of hell. And every single day, we're faced with this choice. Every single action that we take, we're faced with this choice. Every single decision that we have to make, we're faced with this choice between purity and temptation. And back then, this is probably 4 or 5 years ago when I was in my parents' basement. I graduated college, moved back home with my parents because I had no idea what I wanted to do. Then all of a sudden, within the span of a month, COVID hit, lockdowns hit. I wasn't able to leave my house. My girlfriend dumped me and my dog died. I had no money, I was broke, had no income, no idea what I wanted to do with my life. But what I did know is that most of my life I'd been choosing temptation. I was choosing what was good for me in the short term, but led me to this point in my life that was absolute hell. And I had to look in the mirror and realize that I had to switch things up. I had to go from temptation to pursuing purity. And what does this look like? Well, there's multiple forms of purity, but to chase purity on a simplified level, it really means discipline. And so there's physical discipline, there's mental discipline, and there's spiritual discipline. What does each one of these mean? Physical discipline is what we choose to feed our body. Mental discipline is what we choose to feed our mind. Spiritual discipline is what we choose to feed our soul. And we choose to feed these by the actions that we take. And if we think about it, why is this even important? Well, let's say here's our North Star, right? That's supposed to be a star and we want to get there. But there's a series of steps and levels that we need to climb in order to get up there, right? In order to get, we had to get from level 1 to level 2, and then from level 2 to level 3, level 3 to level 4, 4 to level 5. But to make that climb, to make each climb to that next level, there's a test that we have to pass right here, right here, right here, and right here. And those tests come in the form of our biggest distraction and temptation. See, the enemy throws these tests at us to try and derail us from our mission, from living out our purpose, from honoring ourselves and honoring God and the path that we have laid out for us, the reason that we're put on this planet. And so the enemy, the opposition, whatever you want to call it, tries to take us away from that, tries to keep us stuck, tries to keep us like suppressed and not fulfilling our true purpose and our calling. And so the reason why most people are not successful and the 1% becomes the 1% and the rest stay stuck in this loop is because they're stuck at level 0 right here, and they're in this wicked cycle of they get thrown a test and then they choose an action and they fail the test, and then they get the test again and they fail, and they just go around and around and around in this circle of getting tested and then failing, getting tested and failing, getting tested and failing. And so what that test looks like is purity versus temptation. They choose the thing that makes them feel happy right now, but then it leads to a life of hell. Instead of choosing the thing that's difficult right now, that's going to lead to heaven on earth, and all of your wildest dreams will come true. And so a lot of the time, this looks like distractions and temptations. Let me tell you a story. So back then, I used to be addicted to caffeine. I used to have 3 to 4 cups of coffee every single day. I used to feel like an absolute zombie when I would wake up in the morning. I remember just feeling so tired and groggy and just like angry at the world until I had a cup of coffee. And then once I did, it was heaven on earth. It was absolutely insane. It was the best feeling in the world. It felt incredible. I felt so warm. I felt just alive and energized and recharged, and it was unbelievable. But here's the thing. The caffeine wasn't the bad thing, right? There's nothing really inherently wrong with caffeine, but what it did to me was brutal. So if we look at it and we look at a graph of our dopamine, and again, this all comes back down to dopamine regulation. So if we look at it, when I started the day, I was down here. Then I have a cup of coffee, I'd have a huge spike. And it was great, and then I'd crash a few hours later. And then I have another one, and then I crash, right? And it was this series of just these huge highs and then these huge lows. But the danger came in these lows, right here, right here. I would chase junk food, something that was just a cheap dopamine source to try and just pick me back up, right? And you're picking back up and then boom, 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 boom. And I was just in such a constant state of anxiety and fluctuations of energy and dopamine that I was trapped. I was a slave to my dopamine levels. And so what this would lead to is in the afternoon, in order for me to sleep later that night, I had to cut out caffeine. I couldn't have any more caffeine. So I'd have junk food. I'd end up just like being so tired and drained and just being in such a low that I just like find myself on the couch or laying in my bed and just like doom scrolling for like 2 hours just on Instagram. And then all of a sudden you see lustful pictures that lead you down lustful thoughts and lead you to take very lustful actions that lead to shame and regret. And I was stuck and trapped in this cycle every single day. And again, the problem wasn't the caffeine. The problem was what the caffeine was doing to my dopamine regulation. It was forcing me, maybe not forcing me, but it was having a very, very, very powerful influence on what I was doing and my day-to-day actions, right? Every single thing that I would do, all my actions were optimized for just feeling good right now in the short term. I didn't really care about the long-term effects of it because I was in survival mode. I just had to have another quick fix to get my dopamine levels high again. And so after just being stuck in that cycle over and over and over, I decided enough was enough, and I went cold turkey. I cut out caffeine. I built systems around my life to help me not slip back again. And so instead of having a cup of coffee, I'd swap it to like peppermint tea. So there's no caffeine, but I still get like that warm feeling. It wasn't the same, but it was like close enough that it helped me kind of wean off. And well, I didn't wean off, I cut it. And that day I eliminated it. But guess what? Because that first domino never fell in the morning, the other ones didn't either. And so to prevent like doom scrolling and eating shitty food. I installed other systems into my life. I deactivated my Instagram account. I turned off my phone and put it in a drawer for 6 months. I started 75 Hard. I started reading a book every single week. And I went in. Before, I was chasing external stimulus. I was chasing external validation and external things that were going to try and fill me up. But the problem with vices and distractions and temptations is they leave you feeling empty. They don't actually fill you up. They give you the impression that they fill you up a little bit. They might get you 70, 80, 90%, but there's always going to be that little piece in there that's still a void, right? And at the end of the day, you choose vices and distractions and temptations to fill a void within inside of you. And that void results from choosing the path of least resistance, choosing the easy thing that feels good right now and not something that actually serves you in the long term. That's where that void comes from. The vices are there to just distract you from your insecurities. They're there to try and numb you from what you're afraid to face internally. And so the way I saw it is I didn't have any other option. I was at ground zero. I had nothing. And nobody was coming to save me except for myself. I had to pull myself out of there. And so I went in, right? Before I was trying to I was trying to escape. I was trying to go out. And when we don't have clarity on our purpose and our calling, one of my mentors said this the other day, we look to escape. But when we do know, we do have purpose, we do have clarity, then we look to engage. And so in other words, when you don't know why you're put on this planet, when you don't know what you're here to do, you try to escape with external things that try to just put a band-aid over a bullet hole of that void inside of you. Whereas when you decide that you finally had enough, you heal that wound fully by going internal. You go inside. You don't try and run away. You go deep within inside of you. That's the only way you can actually heal. Most people are walking around with lots of band-aids over bullet holes. Their vices are there to try and... The vices and the temptations and distractions are literally your old self and the enemy grabbing onto your ankle, trying to drag you down, pull you down, so you can't get up to that next level. It sees you trying to climb up to that next level, and it's grabbing tight. It's like a vice grip on your ankle, trying to pull you back down so you don't get up there, and then you don't get up there, and up there, and up there, right? And so you have to choose presence and purpose over distraction and temptation. How do we know if something is a distraction or a temptation? We lie to ourselves. We try to justify that this thing's actually good for us. We create stories in our heads that tell ourselves, you know what, like, it's fine to just like relax in the evenings and, you know, throw on Netflix for 3-4 hours and just binge a TV show. Yeah, that's fine. I've been working hard and stuff like that, right? At the end of the day, it's like, well, our intuition knows. Deep down in our heart and our soul and our gut, we know that's not like the best use of our time. Sure, it's good to decompress and to relax. But what if you swap that with reading a book? What if you spent like even just an hour reading a book instead? How much stronger of a foundation you're going to build for yourself? Which one do you think is going to be more in alignment with the vision that you have for yourself? If you're watching this video, you made it this far, and you watch my other videos, you probably have a big vision for your life that you want to build. You probably have big goals. And that tells me that you want to create a life of abundance. Create a life that you've always dreamed of. That person that has that life that you've always dreamed of, what do you think they would choose in that moment? Would they choose to kick their feet up, get comfortable, and binge a new TV show? Or would they choose to just sit down, do the hard, boring thing that they don't really want to do right now, and pick up a book and read it? That's the difference. And again, it comes down to discipline. There's physical discipline, mental discipline, spiritual discipline. Physical discipline looks like you choosing to get up and and go to the gym, or not snack and eat shitty foods and eat something clean instead. Mental discipline looks like reading a book instead of doom scrolling or binging Netflix. Spiritual discipline looks like getting up, going for a walk, going to just do something instead of falling for temptation in the heat of the moment. That's going to lead you to feel shameful and guilty and just stuck in a cycle and just trapped. And so there's a quote, I can't remember who said it, but it says something along the lines of like, greatness is not an act, it's a habit, right? Greatness is what we repeatedly do. It's not an act, therefore it's not an act, it's a habit. I think that's how it goes. I might have butchered that. But it's a habit of choosing those micro decisions in every little second and minute that goes on in our life. It's not like you don't become great by doing just like one big grand thing. You become great by doing so many little things that seem so minuscule and unimportant in the moment for a long period of time. Like, let's look at an example like baseball. In the World Series Finals, Game 7, the guy who swings the bat, hits the ball, hits a grand slam home run to win the game in overtime. That's greatness. However, he didn't just get up that morning, decide he wanted to play baseball, get put on this team, and then be able to swing the bat at 100-mile-an-hour fastball and hit it over the fence and win the game. It was a result of like millions of micro decisions throughout years of his entire life that led to that moment of greatness. That's what overnight success really is. Overnight success is finally seeing some sort of payday from all of the boring shit that you do on a day-to-day basis for years before you see any results. I don't think I made my first dollar online for like 2 or 3 years after like starting that. It wasn't 3 years, it was closer to 2. And that sucked. But I knew deep down that I was acting in alignment with my higher self that was on the route to the life that I wanted to create. And so a lot of people have it wrong. They want to just like have the things. But in order to have, you have to do. In order to do, you have to be, right? It's be, do, have. You have to, in order to have the things you want, you have to do the actions required to get there, right? So you have to show up every single day. You gotta talk to people, you gotta have something to sell, you gotta deliver it, you gotta sell, market, blah, 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 right? All the boring stuff that we have to do in order to grow a business. However, I didn't used to, I wasn't always capable of doing that stuff. There's a point in my life, 4 or 5 years ago, where I was lazy. I would procrastinate. I'd tell myself, oh, I'll do this tomorrow. I'll read a book tomorrow. I'll do some outreach tomorrow. I'll send some cold emails tomorrow. I'll do some cold calls tomorrow. But that tomorrow never came until I had this moment of realization. And chances are that tomorrow is never going to come for you unless you do the same. Unless you realize that nobody's coming to save you except for you. And that should give you excitement and hope, because you have the power right now to decide to change your entire life forever. This could be that one decision, that one day, that one moment that you look back on in your entire life 30 years from now. Be like, man, that was the day that changed everything. That was when I decided to choose greatness in every little simple act. That was the day I chose purpose over distraction. That was the day I chose discipline over temptation. Get clear. So here's what you gotta do. You gotta ask yourself, that person that has the life that I want, what actions do they do on a daily basis? And then, how do they view themselves? What identity do they have? What stories do they tell themselves? What beliefs do they choose to hold? And then you have to act as if you're already that person. You have to be delusional and lie to yourself in a really good way, and kind of hypnotize yourself day in, day out, that you already are this person that has all these things. And that's when you become them. Slowly you morph into this person, this character that you've created for yourself. And then doing those actions becomes easy, becomes the standard, becomes the new baseline. And then you increase your capacity and your strength. You become a stronger warrior, which then allows you to pass bigger, harder, tougher tests to get to higher levels on the path to greatness, success, and fulfillment. And so get clear on what you want, what you have to do, and who you got to become, and then be that person right now. Choose to be that person in every single little micro decision. Whenever you're faced with the decision of temptation or purity, choose purity. Or choose what you think that version of yourself would choose. What would 10.0 version of yourself do? What would 100K a month Jeremy do? That was the character that I created. I called him 100K a month Jeremy. What would he do in this moment? Would he choose to slack off and be lazy? Or would he choose to rise to the occasion and do the boring things that he really didn't want to do, but he knew that would serve him in the long run? And I acted as if I was already making 100K a month. And it wasn't very long until I was. So that's it for the video. If you like this one, let me know down below. Love to hear some big takeaways. Let me know if this hit. If you want to see more of them, let me know. Aside from that, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.